record in here so that I've got the backup. There goes the encoder. And you are good to go.
All right. Well, guys, welcome to another edition of Urban Embodiment Presents UE Talk. I am Deshaun Whip Dog Whipple, and I'm here with my partner,
Lakeisha Coakley.
She did it again. She missed the timing. The timing is off ever since we've been in these boxes.
I said my name.
Well, guys, as always, want to thank y'all for checking in with us right here on the Podcast Detroit app and on our Facebook live stream. Lakeisha, I know you want to talk to them about something with us as far as urban embodiment goes. You want to let people know right quick?
Yeah, so we decided to cancel our small business expo, and we decided to cancel our day bus trip to Carolina. With everything going on, it's kind of hard to plan events even in the future. So things change at least every week. So we decided to postpone everything right now. So if anybody paid for any vendor spots or any bus seats, reach out to us at urbanembodiment313@gmail.com, and we will be more than happy to refund you any monies we collected for either event.
Absolutely. And guys, as always, we want to make sure everybody stays safe. So that's what we're going to do right now. But you can always still join our singles group, Singles Dating in Detroit or Singles Dating in Lance if you're single out there, and we'll hook you up. And we can always still talk and interact on there. We have Zoom conversations in there all the time as well. But speaking of shutting things down, today the order was extended to May 28th, and that's going to be our topic today. We have two people that are going to talk about the stay-at-home order and all the executive orders put in place by Governor Gretchen Whitmer. Today we have standing for the stay-at-home order, Ms. Jenny Boyle. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Okay.
Good evening. Good evening.
And we have against it Ms. Christina Caramo. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How is everyone?
Good evening. Good evening.
We're doing well. Well, first things first, Jenny, if you let us know a little bit about yourself, how do you feel about the stay-at-home order, just in a general aspect, before we go into some questions?
Yeah, absolutely. So about me, I am recently a stay-at-home mom. I have 2 kids under 2, and we have not left the house in a very long time. And as you can imagine, with 2 tiny ones, we're going a little stir crazy. That being said, all of our household income is coming in from the mortgage industry, which essentially was completely flipped off overnight, basically, when all of this started to happen. So I'm very familiar with the impacts, both financially, mentally, with how these things are impacting families. But we are pretty fortunate still in this situation. None of us are sick. So we're just trying to enjoy the sunshine on the days that we have it and make the best of it. But I have seen people around me that have been impacted by this. In both health-wise, job-wise, things like that. So it is something that I know is a painful pill to swallow, but it's something that I do think is super necessary. And we're seeing how well it is working in Michigan.
Okay. Is that the baby's part of the family back there making some noise?
That's the babies. Yeah, my son is 2, and my daughter is almost, she just turned 6 months.
Hey, tell them we said hello. And welcome to the show as well.
You'll probably hear a little bit more from them if Toy Story doesn't keep them distracted.
Okay. And also, now we have, like I said, opposing the stay-at-home order. Could you say who you are and let people know a little bit about you?
Hi, so my name is Christina Caramo. I am a teacher. And, this has impacted me, especially in regards to my students. I really miss that interaction that I have with my students and a lot of important educational elements that the students need beyond just the information that I present to them. They're missing out on. So, as far as how the stay-at-home order is impacting me, financially, actually, it's not hurting me because I'm working from home, and then 2, you save a lot of money. Don't have to drive anywhere, not eating out, So in that regard, it's been more of a mental frustration, because I have 2 children and they're getting restless at home. They want to go do things. We had some big plans coming up. I don't know if you remember, I finished grad school this year. So my graduation was supposed to be in California. So me and my kids were super excited. So, but I tried to not allow that to upset me too much. They were super bummed, but I try to remember that, hey, I'm still alive and I haven't lost my job, unlike a lot of people. And I try to be grateful. Now, did you want me to get into my position, or do you want me to just save that for later? So.
Oh, whatever you would like to talk about right now. But we got some questions for you, so go right ahead.
Yeah. So, for my position on the lockdown, I am very cognizant of the death toll and how it is spreading very rapidly. I had several members of my family contract the coronavirus. Did have a distant cousin pass away who lives in another state. We have a coworker who battled coronavirus, so I'm very aware of the impact that it had. My ex-husband's brother had coronavirus and he was really suffering in the hospital. So I think for the people who want the economy to open up, I think there's this kind of misconception that we just don't care about people dying. We just like the heck with everybody. So what? Sink or swim, the strong survive. And that's not what's going on. Many of us are looking at the financial impact, because the financial impact is very, very real. And people are losing their jobs. People's businesses are being shut down. And we feel like that. I personally feel, I don't want to say we, because I speak for myself. In the beginning, the first couple of weeks, I kind of was like, okay, I understand, because this is a disease. Like coronavirus itself is not a new disease. That COVID-19 strand is a new strand that's been new into the human population. So I understand like it's a new disease in the human population. We kind of need to see what's going on first. But then at a certain point, once things start to pan out and we realize how it operates, the whole point was to flatten the curve, because we're not going to eradicate the disease. That's just not going to happen. So the point was to flatten the curve so our hospitals won't be overwhelmed. And to me, at this point, we have done so. So now it's time for people to get back to work.
Jenny, would you like to rebuttal that at all?
Yeah, I think that you are absolutely right, and that people are losing their jobs. They are absolutely feeling the pain of this, but flattening the curve and the hospitals not being overwhelmed, that means great, there's a ventilator for you when you do get sick. So yes, that's wonderful, but people are still dying alone. So until we're at a point where you aren't dying by yourself after not seeing your family for weeks after being on a ventilator, I don't see that this is the time. We need treatments. We need to have a plan other than, well, maybe you'll be okay. We don't know, but sorry, you can't see your family for weeks. So I completely relate to, how the hardship is, but we're just not there yet. 2 months feels like a long time when you're staring at your own four walls and your kids are climbing them, but 2 months is a blink of the eye compared to prior pandemics, compared to prior disease issues, compared to prior recessions. So I think we're still on the very early edge of this, and the culture of like instant everything all the time makes us be like, why don't we have a vaccine? And 18 months for a vaccine is extremely, extremely rapid, as we've heard say a million times. So, I get it and I feel you. I just feel like it's too soon. We're too soon to like let everybody free again.
Yeah, I don't think that we should just necessarily just open things up willy-nilly. You know what I mean? I do think there needs to be some measurables involved. My concern is more so that we should look to protect the vulnerable populations, because even waiting for a vaccine, that's not realistic. We can't keep our economy shut down for 18 months. There's other things we need to consider. One thing is that it's not just us who depend on America's economy, because America's economy collapsing will also cause poverty in other countries as well. So that's something we consider. Also, poverty causes death. Poverty causes death. There's also a lot of mental illness. We've also seen an uptick in domestic violence, child abuse. For many students, school is their only outlet. Leaving home, being with peers, community centers, that is their only outlet. So there's no set measurable for when we are to open, because even if we say a vaccine, well, at best 18 months, well, that may not happen. We might not get a vaccine for 3 years, 2 years. So are we going to stay, keep this going for years? That's not very practical. So we have to ask ourselves, what's a reasonable measurable that we can live with? Because whether we open up, say in 2 days or 2 years, whenever we open up, there will be an uptick of the virus simply because people are walking around. But at some point we have to ask ourselves, are we causing more harm than good? Because when we look at a lot of statistics regarding the death rate, like in Connecticut, 90% of their deaths have occurred in a nursing home. But that doesn't mean that these people's lives are not valuable on a moral level. On a moral level, all human life is important. All human life is equal on a moral level. But when you look at it from a public policy perspective, you can't make public policy based on it if we just save one life. Because, you know, when we walk through our everyday life, we're constantly walking through minefields. So we have to ask ourselves, we have to create a ratio, some kind of formula as to what is going to be the best time for us to do this, because eventually it's going to happen. We have to let up.
And there was a, you know, in my day job, and I don't want to say what I do, but there was, it was said that because of the stay-at-home order, it was a lot less CPS referrals because the kids are at home and there's no access to other people that usually make those referrals, like teachers and doctors, because the doctor's office is closed, the teachers are closed. So those kids who are vulnerable, there's no voice to speak for them because they're not around the people who are able to make that call so they can be saved. So I just kind of wanted to point that out. Like with the whole thing, I'm on the fence about it for my own sanity. You know what I mean? I'm like, okay, you know, and like you said, at first it was like, okay, cool. But like now, like even today I was disappointed because, you know, the 15th I was ready. I had my 15th outfit. I'm like, I'm about to be out here in these streets, you know. But then I'm like, what is the point of the stay-at-home order when everything is closed? You know what I mean? So I'm just, it's like, I'm on the fence, but I do support, you know, the governor, you know, the legislature, whoever is in charge of putting these things in place, because at this point, they're the experts, I guess. So, you know, all I can do is just sit and obey the laws or whatever. But I'm like, okay, it's good. The curve is flattening and everything. But I'm like, do we really need to stay at home order if everything's closed?
Yeah.
Jenny, let me ask you this question right quick.
Yeah.
And I know you're not necessarily on the medical front line. As you stated about the possible vaccinations, if you were to say a time frame, what would you think would be a good?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hear your question.
I'm sorry, my phone got. Can you hear me now?
Yes, now I can.
Okay. Yeah. Like I was saying, I know you're not necessarily on the medical front line, but if you were to like select a time frame to open in phases, what would you say? Do you think 6 months we kind of open up, or how would you, if you were to kind of put something together?
Yeah, you know, based on what I've been hearing, what I've been seeing, so this is purely anecdotal, right? I trust in the phase plan, right? The governor was talking today about a 6-phase plan, where if we get to this point and we're doing it well and things aren't going up, then we can move on to the next step. And based on my own experience at Kroger last weekend, where they have red and green on the floor saying, yes, walk down the aisle, or no, this is a one-way, and people's complete inability to do that, complete inability to maintain 2 cart distances apart. You know, I asked this woman, you know, would you mind just giving me a little bit of space? You're coming the wrong way down the aisle. And she blew up at me. And so if we can't walk the right way down grocery store aisle, I'm having a really hard time believing that people are going to do the right thing when we start opening things back up yet. So I think a very slow and measured approach is what we need. And I know that people want like a day on the calendar, right? Like I want to go out, I want to do things. I have vacations planned this summer. I miss my parents. So I would love to have that day to look forward to. But when we do it 2 weeks at a time, it's this continual like build up and then let down. So it's really hard. We want, like, human beings need something to look forward to, and we want that day on the calendar. So as far as timelines go, I think what's going to happen is that people are going to get really tired of staying at home, and people are just going to start doing what they want to do anyways, regardless. And then we're going to see an uptick, and then people are going to panic again, and we're going to get shut down again. So that's kind of, unfortunately, my best guess as to human nature at this point. But I think we're just going to get tired of it. And I think a lot of it's going to have to do with the election coming up and the more politics coming into play, unfortunately. But I think that if we just kind of buckle down and stay home now, we're more likely to see a true measured reopening as a slow roll pace. So I would love to say by the end of summer, things are back to normal, but I have no idea. I just don't trust people to do the right thing as often as they should.
Now, Christine, I got a quick question for you.
Yeah.
And this will apply to, well, either one of you guys can answer this, right? But before you rebuttal. I don't know if you guys saw, there was a gentleman in Owasso who's a barber. The
Right.
gentleman stated he had his barbershop had been there he's been working there for 60 years, and he decided to just reopen. And a lot of people in, I'm not going to say the names of either group, but there's a Facebook group that's, rather full, if you will. And a lot of those people are saying that's what people should do, just reopen their businesses regardless. Now, how do you feel about that, though? Because there's a possibility they can get a ticket or even go to jail because somebody, I believe, in
Texas.
yeah, we did 7 days or whatever. So what do you think about that? People just opening up their businesses regardless. Do you think they should do that or no?
I personally don't have a problem with that. And the reason why I see America is a free country. For the people who are concerned about leaving the home, I mean, I don't mean to sound harsh or crass by saying it, well, then just stay home. If you feel that concerned about the virus in your family, then no one's compelling people to leave their home. For all of us who want to leave, we should have the freedom to do so. And that's where my frustration lies. I do think there needs to be protections in place for vulnerable populations, people who are like immunocompromised, people who are maybe elderly, people who have different diseases. I think there definitely need to be protection measures in place that when we open up, those people have some safety involved. And I do think there needs to be some other we need to make adjustments. Like my mom was talking about, like when we go to restaurants, right? And the condiments, how often do those things get wiped off? Everybody's touching the salt and pepper shaker. So there definitely need to be some adjustments in how we sanitize things. But I have a talking to my cousin last week, he's still waiting on unemployment. So, I mean, if you can't feed your family, what are you supposed to do? So I think
not get a haircut.
Yeah, well, no, but you're assuming that the people unable to feed their family need a haircut. You can't make that assumption. The guy who's getting his haircut, the guy who's cutting the hair is the one who needs the money. So we can't say that everybody who, we don't know those people sitting in a chair financial situation. We do know the person who owns the business, they have a right to feed their family. And I think it's unfair to tell those people, sit down, you can't feed your family because I'm uncomfortable when people are outside. Well, then that person should just stay in the house. It's a free country. Then people don't have to leave. They can stay home. They wear masks every time they go outside. They can wear gloves every time they go outside. They can have delivery services only, and no one is preventing them from doing that. So if that man says, I can't take care of my family, I can't pay my bills, why should he be prevented from doing so when people still are waiting for unemployment? How many months is he supposed to go by unable to pay a credit card bill, mortgage payment? I mean, that's just not fair to me.
So I agree with a lot of what you said, except for the fact that it's a free country up until a point where someone else's decisions are infringing on my right to live and to live safely. So that barber who needs to cut people's hair to pay his bills may be an asymptomatic carrier. And all those people coming from all across the state, because it's become a political rallying point now that's getting publicized to hundreds of thousands of people to go support this man and his freedoms, may infect all of those people and then drive all across the state and get people who did not choose to put their butt in that chair sick. And how many people are they going to infect? So if this was a matter of riding your motorcycle without a helmet where the only person you're hurting is you, fine. But this isn't. This is something where you can carry something and infect people that can kill them without you knowing it. So your rights to freedom, people's rights to freedom, people's rights to choose end where they start impacting other people's right to live.
Let me say this, but you don't have to leave your house. So if you don't leave your home, then you're not impacted when I leave my house. So it doesn't matter. And
if you walk down the grocery store aisle too close to me.
I didn't. First of all, I didn't cut you off. He asked me to be civil, and I'm gonna be so. So I asked you the same of you. I didn't cut you off, but that's respectful. Okay, so show me the same courtesy. As I was saying, actually, the guy who rides his motorcycle without a helmet, if he dies and kills himself, our insurance rates go up. So actually, his choices do impact me. Also, what about alcohol? People abuse alcohol every single day. We don't make that illegal. How many people kill people in drunk driving accidents? We can make the same case about so many other things. What about people who smoke? What about people who are obese? All that stuff makes our health insurance costs go up. So of course, all of our decisions impact other people. We walk through a minefield every time we leave the home. That's why I think the fair solution is to provide support for those who are concerned, those who are immunocompromised. That way they don't have to leave the home in fear. But for us who want to go about our everyday lives, we have a right to do so. To tell me I should stay locked in my house because you're uncomfortable, that simply is not my problem. And if a person is sick, they can stay in the house. You know, it's so many other cases where we can think about things that impact people's lives. What about legalization of marijuana? That has no positive benefits. But because we're a free country and enough people wanted it, they have the freedom to do so. People have a right to do what they want with their lives. We can't go around banning things simply because we feel like, oh, well, we on the strength of we can save just one person. And then on top of it, all we come to find the disease have a 5% mortality rate. And then in New York, Governor Cuomo yesterday in New York said they're finding that 66% of all their new cases are people who stayed in home. Only 2% of new cases in New York are actually homeless people. Why isn't the population of homeless people being infected at alarming rates? So there's so many other things that people walking around with all these gloves, actually they're spreading disease by wearing those gloves because they wear gloves for hours and hours and hours without washing their hands. So, I mean, that's it. Just if you want to stay in the house, stay in the house. And if I want to go back about my life, I go back about my life. And to me, it's problem solved.
Well, let me step in right quick because I actually do have a question behind that. One of the biggest things I know some of the people opposing are saying is that if it's high in the Metro Detroit area, keep them quarantined, the Royal Oak, the Detroit, the Dearborn area, and allow the other parts of the state to be open. Christina, I want you to answer that first, and then Jenny, please rebuttal. What do you think about that part, Christina?
Well, I think, to me, like a lot of states are doing it, like in Florida. That's actually what they're doing. So like in South Florida, like Governor DeSantis, I recognize that Miami is a hot spot. Any place that's densely populated is going to be a hot spot. That's why Manhattan, New York is such a hot spot. So the way they have it is places like Northern and Central Florida, they're allowing them to open up because the cases are so low. And then they have stricter measures on the places where it's more packed. And so to me, that makes the most sense of having a kind of razored approach to it. That would be more comfortable because some of these people where they have one person infected, again, all life matters. And so that person's life still counts. But to me, that makes more sense of having the measures based on where the outbreak is instead of just a one-size-fits-all approach. And like I said, that's what's happening in Florida. That's what he's doing. And to me, that actually makes more sense.
Jenny, what do you think about that question?
Yeah, to me, that makes perfect sense as long as we have the ability to test and the ability to trace. So as testing is ramping up, as we're confident that we know what the spread is within the general population, then it absolutely makes sense. And, we don't want anyone locked in their homes. That's not the goal. We don't want businesses shut down. Nobody wants to shut down indefinitely. And so the governor did talk today about how the state of Michigan is divided into different quadrants depending on people's travel patterns to and from work. And so looking at the different infection rates and where we can start to loosen guidelines. And I think that's a great plan. I think that it's always better to have a scalpel rather than a sledgehammer, right? To have a really nuanced approach. But we are starting to see cases rise in Western Michigan, which as we've seen across the country, it started first in urban areas and places with international airports, and then it spread out slowly through the suburbs and then to rural areas. So it makes sense that cases are now starting to tick up in the more rural and northern parts of the state. And we're seeing cases really slow down in Detroit and in surrounding areas. So I think that the initial reaction of just pause, everyone stop moving, let's do what we can to flatten the curve. And then now, we're reopening manufacturing starting soon. So we have a nuanced approach and different areas of the state are being treated differently. And I think that's fantastic. It just took some time to get a handle on what the heck this thing was and how it's impacting people and what the symptoms are. 2 months to figure that out is really not that long of a time. I know it feels like it, but I think we are at the phase where we can start to take a really specific look at what we can do to get people back to work.
Now, you talked about the tracing. Now that slightly the curve is flattening, how do you guys feel about everyone getting tested? Because, they say there's a lot of people that's asymptomatic. How do you feel about that? Jenny, please answer that. How do you feel about that?
I love it. I think more information is a good thing. I'm a big fan of transparency. I want to know, have I been exposed to it? I want an antibody test immediately. I mean, I'm probably like lowest on the priority list of all time being, staying at home and with 2 kids. Like I don't interact with the public really. So I'm not a priority. But my mom, who is immunocompromised and who works in a nursing home, yeah, she needs to get tested, and she is thankfully going to get tested, and she needs an antibody test. She needs to know if she's been exposed or if she has it now. So I think the more testing, the more tracing, the better. I am concerned because there is a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of anti-vax people who have gotten hung up on this. And so the conspiracy theories, I don't even want to get into it because I don't want to give them credence, but I'm worried that there's going to be a lot of resistance from certain segments of the population to things like telling the government where they went for the last 2 weeks. I see that people probably reacting pretty poorly to that. But I do think it's incredibly necessary if we want to go back to work.
Christina, what do you think about that? Everybody getting tested.
I'm not opposed to it, but to make government mandated everybody testing, the problem is, okay, once you do that, as soon as I take that test, I can actually go out and get infected as soon as I went and took the test. So then how often are we going to do everybody testing? You know, we have to, I think sometimes we have to be careful that we don't come up with these lofty goals and then don't think, okay, now the execution. You know, you guys ever been at work and everybody's coming up with all these ideas and then they say, okay, now how are we actually gonna get this done? And getting that done to me is not really realistic. And then as far as contact tracing, and you do have privacy concerns, you know, there are definite, and I know sometimes Americans, at least folks like such as myself, we can seem a bit over the top as far as privacy concerns, but we just look at things as just history in general. The nature of power is to want to keep it. The nature of power is to want to keep it. We've even seen in our own government's history where people have been exploited, people have been mistreated in many ways. So sometimes just willy-nilly giving up your rights in the name of a better society, sometimes people aren't going to be more suspicious of. I have a friend of mine who, she's Norwegian, and she lives in Norway, and she was telling me now, in Norway, they have, their government is putting this app where everybody has to download the app so that way they can track everybody's movements at all times. And she said, and her concern is that eventually their government is going to make it mandatory where you have to have the app. And then they send you a message where you have to self-quarantine if you came in proximity of the area. And then there's talk of having drones fly around and tell people to go quarantine and stuff like that. To me, that stuff is very, very concerning. I just simply don't trust human nature to that extent to think, oh, I'm in America. That stuff will never happen here. Yeah, look at the Tuskegee experiment. We know the governments abuse power all the time. So, you know, I think any type of contact tracing should not involve any violation of privacy, and it should be totally mandatory. Any testing needs to be not mandatory, voluntary, and any testing should be voluntary, because to test 330 million people on a regular basis, to me, it's just the logistics of it is just not, to me, it's just simply not practical.
Okay. And I'm glad you touched on that, because I was going to ask, we were talking about possible vaccinating whenever it'll come. Now, we know there's a lot of people that don't, there's been a flu shot for many years, and there's people that don't believe in any type of vaccines, you know, what they call them, anti-vaxxers.
Anti-vaxxers, yeah.
So let's say they do make it. Do you think it'll be mandatory that they want us all to take it, or do you think it'll still be optional? And if it's optional, do you think that will help us move forward also, or not? Either one of y'all can answer. And Lakeisha, you can say something too.
Okay, decide.
Well, but Lakeisha was saying something. No, I would not take it.
I didn't know he was waiting on me to say something or not. But I think because, you know, this is something so new, you know, to come out with a vaccine, everybody's not going to be on board right away, because with anything new, you don't know how people may react to it. You know, some people may be allergic. There may be things where it may cause people to have a reaction. So I don't think, well, some people may just like, okay, yeah, just give it to me. But, you know, like even with the flu shot, if you're allergic to certain things, you're not supposed to get it. So, you know, people avoid it whenever. So it'd be good that they would have a vaccine, but I don't think everybody right offhand will jump on board getting this vaccine because it's so new.
I'll be really curious to see if employers require the vaccine. Is there liability in requiring a vaccine? Is there liability in allowing people to come back to work without being vaccinated? I think that there's a lot of really healthy discussion on what an employer's obligation to a safe workplace looks like. What extent does your employer have to go to in order to let people come back to work versus working from home? So I'm going to be really curious to see kind of how that shakes out. And I think that as important as it is to have a vaccine as quickly as possible, it's more important to make sure that it's safe and that it's effective and that it's not giving people a false sense of security. We've seen a lot of influence from certain politicians into the FDA and the CDC that we haven't seen before ever. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. And as much as we trust a lot of aspects of our government, there's a lot that we should be, you know, questioning always and wanting more answers and more transparency. So I think that it's too soon to tell, but it's going to be very interesting to watch, and I think we should all watch it closely.
Ms. Karamo?
No, I would not get it. Straight up, no. I'm an anti-vaxxer. So I wasn't vaccinated as a kid, and my kids aren't vaccinated, and they're very healthy. They're 11 to 12. They're super healthy. They're super active, and they're fine. I know tons of people who don't. Their kids are very healthy. Because the issue is actually politics and corruption has been in the medical industry for years. And that's in science in general, because a lot of power is revolved around in it. Anytime you have money and power involved in something, corruption will follow suit, because we turn to these experts to make public policy decisions all the time. So they wield significant amounts of power. And then two, for a new disease, for us to be on standstill to a vaccine, one, again, we may never get one. And then on top of it, as Lakeisha mentioned, the side effects. We know how many commercials have we seen? Have we seen where some class action lawsuit against a pharmaceutical company because some treatment or some medication turned out to be terrible? So when it comes to people's body rights, that people should not be compelled to take a vaccine. I think that's grossly inappropriate, to do. Because I know Justin Trudeau in Canada has been toying around with the idea, and I'm not familiar 100% with all their laws in Canada, but he has been playing around with the idea. I personally think in America that would not fly, forcing people. Now, people want to do that. And even if a private company is saying that, listen, we want to do this for our employees, technically, I can't really be opposed to that to a certain extent. Because, if they feel like that's the most safe thing for their particular company, it's their business, then I can, I understand people have very passionate about it and people have their own views, but for the government to compel people to do so, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
And I'm going to piggyback off of that right quick. Now, you say that, but you also spoke on somebody having their own business. Keep this in mind, though. Right now, a lot of the places that are opening are making people take the COVID test to even be able to work. So you don't think that's similar? Them making them take a test to even be able to work and taking the vaccine? What if they say, just like you got to take the test to get back to work, you got to take the vaccine to come back to work? What would you say then?
Well, taking the test and taking the vaccine are different. I don't know a whole lot about immunology and vaccines as far as RNA strand vaccines. I know the little I do know, again, the very little I do know, that RNA viruses are very difficult to make vaccines for because of their very nature. Because like our RNA transcribes the information from our DNA and codes the amino acids to create new proteins. And I think that because of the transcription process, I think that's why they mutate so easily, from what I understand. So the safety effects are really, really important. They're really, really important. So I just kind of feel like taking a test isn't dangerous. I wouldn't be opposed to taking a test if my job said, hey, we want to do regular temperature checks. I wouldn't be opposed to that because that doesn't pose any threat to my life. To me, to take a test and a temperature check, no, I wouldn't complain at all. That would just be irrational. My concern with a mandatory vaccine is safety concern. And I want to make it clear about people who are opposed to vaccines, at least myself. I'm not opposed to inoculation. We've seen many diseases like polio, smallpox, many diseases have been eradicated because of vaccines. So I think sometimes people who are against vaccines get put in a box. We put them in a box and label them as a bunch of kooks without ever actually talking to a person and saying, why do you think this way? The problem with vaccines is the way they're being administered, because many vaccines, they have a bunch of preservatives and additives in the vaccine. And then too, when you think about 50 years ago when vaccines were given, like for polio or something, the child would just get the polio shot and that's it. And it would be largely spaced out over a significant amount of time. Well, now we have like the MMR, we have combo shots. So they have combo shots with tons of preservatives in the shots. And then on top of that, you can't even sue a pharmaceutical manufacturer for vaccine injury. You have to sue the government and go to a vaccine injury court. So there's a lack of accountability involved in the vaccine industry, and that's what the problem is. So if there was accountability, there was no preservatives involved in vaccines, I would not be opposed to them at all. That's just me. But when I can't hold the people accountable for something I'm mandated to receive, that creates a whole host. And a lot of these people, you got like Bill Gates on television pushing vaccines. Yeah, he stands to make billions of dollars from it. He's not a medical professional. He's just the richest man in the world. And so we suddenly just want to listen to him. So there's so much more involved. There's so much more involved. But I do think, you know, for those who want it, it should be available for them.
First of all, you ain't tell me that when you sent your bio over that you was a medical doctor, you was gonna be using all these terms that we didn't know what they meant. I'm joking.
I said most of the time, I'm not a medical professional. I'm no way. I just try my best to learn about different things. That's it. Now, again, some of y'all may not agree with me, and of course, that's fine, but that's just my belief.
Now, Jenny, I want to personalize some of these next couple questions I want to bring to you guys. And Jenny, this question, you said currently you're a stay-at-home mom, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you said you guys are doing like the real estate thing as well, if I'm not mistaken, right?
So I way back, I was a mail carrier. I was a delivered mail while I was in college, and I quit that to go work for a political campaign in rural Ohio in 2012. Came back to Michigan, broke as you wouldn't believe, and got into mortgages. And I've been in the mortgage industry since then, all the way up until I decided to stay home this past October. So I've seen a couple different sides of the universe here. So very, very different from delivering mail to working in politics. But working in politics and working in mortgages is not like ridiculously similar. It's actually kind of funny.
Okay.
Sales and persuasion.
The reason why I asked that, and like I said, I'm gonna personalize this. The three different elements that you just said, from being a stay-at-home mom to working at the mortgages, or actually being in the field as a postal worker. Do you think if you were in different stages of your life, you would look at this whole situation differently?
In some ways.
Or you still feel the exact same way about staying home?
I think it's impossible to say, like, my 10 years ago self, would I view this situation exactly the same as I do now? But I have a lot of family that still works for the post office. They're still working on the front lines, interacting with people every day. I mean, if you're delivering mail, you're going to 500 individual houses every single day. So there's a lot of risk in that. Working in mortgages, no idea, at home on my computer, you know, right now. So that wouldn't be, my opinion wouldn't be any different than it is now. It's what my fiance still does. So I don't see my perspective being different in regards to that at all. The only difference really is that I'm, you know, older with more wrinkles, and I have a little less patience, I think, for people just like willfully disregarding orders that are meant to keep people safe. I think I would have been a lot more patient and a lot more willing to, you know, just play with the rules a little bit when I was younger, but that's definitely not the case now.
Now, I'm going to pick back up. She did state earlier, Christina stated, about people that didn't get their unemployment. Now, let me ask you this, Jenny. If a person been waiting for 2 months, their unemployment has not hit yet, for whatever reason, they didn't get their stimulus check, they don't have a bunch of money saved up, what do you tell that person that, they want to work? What would you tell that person directly if they're watching right now? Just like the gentleman that has the barbershop that went out there, what would you tell them? And what would make them understand why you think they should stay home?
I would say that I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry that you have to choose between paying the bills and your health. That at no point in 2020 America should we be in a situation where you have to choose between paying credit card debt, paying for food, and staying healthy. I would say to this person that if you do get sick, you're going to be in a much, much worse situation than you are now. And it's really hard to do the thing right now that's difficult to prevent something worse in the future when it's a maybe and it's invisible. So I would say, please reach out to friends and family, reach out to resources. There's churches, there's schools, there's food banks that are doing everything they can to get food out to people, and reach out to all of your creditors. There's not a single day that goes by where I don't see a commercial on TV about how someone is willing to help in this crisis. So call your credit card companies, defer your payments, do everything you can to kind of push those down the road a little bit, but be mindful and ask questions when you do, because you don't want 4 months from now have to pay 4 months of all of your bills all at once. So ask a lot of questions, ask for help, and I'm sorry you're going through this. And it's really, really difficult, but if we do the hard thing now, we're gonna be through this sooner and we can be better.
And real quick, have you been tested for COVID at this point or no?
No, I have not.
You haven't had any symptoms?
Nope.
Okay.
No symptoms, no reason, and for so long the tests were just for the people on the front lines, and so I will not until I'm in a situation where I need to, or they're so freely available that I wouldn't be taking it away from someone else who needs it sooner.
For sure. Now, Christina, on the reverse side of that, I'm gonna personalize it with you. You saying that people need to get their money, they got to get their money because they can't be in a situation where they don't have to provide for their family. But let's say you had a business and you do start it up and you go back home and you get your children sick, or you get your boyfriend sick or whatever, or somebody in your family. Would that change your opinion on this whole situation?
I'm gonna say no, and it's not because of a disregard. I just look at the reality. The mortality rate is extremely low. You know, the mortality rate is very, very low. Like I said, in New York, they find the mortality rate is really like 5.5%. That's exceptionally low. And then if you look at it with children, even sadly, the young little girl who died in Detroit, she had another illness going on as well. So the probability of a child dying from it, you know, it's so minute. I mean, they could die from any disease any other time. That's the thing. We've dealt with SARS, H1N1, all these other diseases before. So the way I look at it is the probability of the child dying is so small compared to the devastation of not being able to feed your family. Like we mentioned, like the woman in Texas who was arrested, she's like, I'm a single parent. I have to feed my kids. And I'm sorry, and I wish it was better. It doesn't put any food in kids' stomach. It doesn't pay any bills. It doesn't help anything. Because the reality is, and there's another layer to this, like this should teach Americans to be more prudent with their funds. Because typically we're supposed to save 3 months financially in case of something happening. So I hope that this is a wake-up call for people to be more financially responsible as well. But the reality is that a lot of people aren't, and we don't know what was going on financially for a person before. So, you know, we know poverty causes a lot of death, you know, as well. So people can't feed their kids, you know, well wishes aren't going to put food in people's stomach. And I heard a report the AP put out that one in 5 children are not getting enough food because a lot of kids depend on the school system to feed them. So, I mean, and I don't want to seem dismissive to the people who want to continue to shut down. I mean, even though I think the whole shutdown thing is past due and ridiculous, and I'm not shying away from that, but I don't want to seem disingenuous to people who support the lockdown because I think people's heart is in a good place. I think they mean well and they're looking out for the well-being of people and they want to see people's lives saved, and they feel like in the long term it might hurt us in the short term, but in the long term this is best to save as many lives as possible. And I totally respect that. I just think the preponderance of evidence doesn't support that claim because for the simple fact that like in New York, 66% of new cases are all people who stayed at home. And then like a lot of these cases are coming from nursing homes and prisons and other places where people are packed in tight spaces. And then another component, I think we should talk about the mental impact. You know, I have children, so I'm not alone. You know, I have a family. Trust me, there's no quiet time around here. But what about the people who have no family, who the only outlet they have were friends? They don't have anybody. Where, you know, I don't know. That's just the way I feel about it.
We do a whole lot of Zoom. That's what we doing. People like me that just in the house by myself, we do a whole lot of Zoom.
Now, house party is the new thing now. They done found something new. So if it ain't Zoom, it's house party. If it ain't house party, it's Microsoft Teams. If it ain't Teams, it's Skype. If it ain't Skype, it's Facebook Messenger. But I do have a question for each of you ladies. So for the conspiracy theorists out there, what do you guys think about? A lot of people think the coronavirus was a man-made virus or whatever. So what do you guys' take on that?
All right, I'll take this one first.
Yeah.
So whether or not it was man-made, I mean, we know that there's medical research going on in every major country around the world and some not so major countries. And we know that the overwhelming majority of the time, medical research is done for good. We know that there's bad people out there that are doing bad things and that things can happen, right? So whether or not it was man-made in this stage or it was bad to human transmission, that's going to be important down the road. Down the road, when we look back, that's going to matter. But right now, I think that our efforts should be focused on finding some sort of treatment, on finding some way to manage this, and finding a way to reopen our economy in a way that has as little pain as possible. Because I mean, I found out today, I read a CNBC report that women who are pregnant are miscarrying and having stillborn babies because of the virus crossing into the placenta. So, I mean, we thought for a long time that pregnant women weren't at any greater risk than the average person and that kids were fine. And now we're finding out that that's not the case at all. So the conspiracy theories are wild, and I've heard so many of them. I get so many messages from people, what about this? And I don't, it's a distraction, because I think, in my personal opinion, human nature, when something crazy that nobody's ever dealt with is happening, we want a boogeyman and we want someone to blame, and we want to point the finger and say it's your fault, or this guy's fault, or, you know, these doctors are trying to make a buck, or whatever the case is, because it's easier to blame our misery on someone in particular or something. And so I understand to a certain extent why people are drawn to these things, but I think we need to remain focused and really stay the course in order to get things going again.
Oh, so for myself, you know, whether or not it just as easily could have been manipulated in the lab, you know, to her point, you know, we know there are researchers always manipulating viruses. They do this all. I mean, how many movies? I mean, isn't that what happened with Resident Evil? I'm just joking, y'all. Joke. But
I've watched so many conspiracy movies.
So no, but I mean, to her point, I would agree. You know, I wouldn't say, you know, I know she said it matters later. That's true, because at this very moment is, how do we save people's lives? How do we get people back to work? That should be our primary concern. However, I do think it's reasonable to have an investigation, because at first we heard it with bats, people eating bats. Then we heard it came from a lab. Now, you know, and I don't want to seem like what they call like ethnocentrism. Like, you know, in certain cultures they eat certain foods. And yes, it seems very weird to me to eat a bat, but you know, whether that's true or not, but people have said that folks have been doing that for years and years and years. So just hypothetically speaking, if in that area of Wuhan, people have been eating these what they call them, horse nose bats, or whatever they're called, I forgot, it's like horseshoe bats or something like that. If they've been eating these bats for thousands of years and they've never caught the coronavirus, why now? So I think it is plausible that it could have been lab manipulation. You know, if that's the case, then the people who did that, they need to be held accountable. And it needs to be oversight, because you do have scientists who go rogue just like any other profession. That's teachers, politicians. I mean, anytime power and money is involved, because a lot of times with these research grants, I mean, they get billions of dollars to conduct research grants. And sometimes you have somebody with a whole lot of money and a crazy vision, and if you got the right scientist, I mean, you get somebody to do it. So, I mean, we just don't know. And I think, you know, the word conspiracy theorist, you know, I know we use the term as just people who are basically untrusted of the narrative. That's kind of the way I see it. But a lot of times we have good reason to be mistrusted, because we've fed so many lies. You know, we're fed so many lies and misinformation that this group says this and that group says that, and these people are saying this. At least the average person, I'm not a virologist. I'm not an immunologist. I don't know what to believe. So, I mean, I have to just try to piece through the available information to come to my own conclusion. So for the average person, I don't know if we'll ever really know what happened, to be honest. Try to figure it out our best way we can.
And then I have another question too. So, and I'll, you know, start with Christina, and then Jenny can follow. Everything that leadership, I'll say, has put into place during this time, expanding healthcare, giving additional food to kids that's been receiving free meals, expanding unemployment, stimulus checks. I think everything that we've been crying about before this happened, we needed healthcare. The digital divide, how students of poverty don't have access to computers and internet just so they can complete their schoolwork. After this pandemic, do you think leadership will, it kind of opened the eyes for them to realize, okay, these are the things that's needed in different communities, so when this is over, we can still sustain?
Well, you know, I hope it does open our eyes to different things. You know, I think I find that a lot of our politics in America sucks, because you have these people who've been in power for 30 years, 20 years and stuff like that. And their whole agenda is to keep in donations to keep their seat of power, you know, instead of thinking of the well-being of people. When you mentioned like the digital divide, I do think that's very important. But, you know, I hope that we can do something about it to help many more students be prepared for the 21st century. We need serious educational reform. You know, I think that hopefully may bring a light to that we need to improve the quality of education, because many students don't get the support at home they need, because that's one concern, is that everybody doesn't have a tranquil environment for them to even do online learning. You know, as far as healthcare goes, you know, what healthcare changes they're going to make, I don't even know. I don't even know. And then, like you mentioned, the stimulus check, because I know there's this push. Some people want like a UBI, like a universal basic income.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of that stuff, I just don't think that's economically sustainable, because we are in trillions and trillions of dollars of debt, and the Fed is just print money. And we're going to be like Germany in the 20s and 30s, where they just willing, just money is like burnt, it's like paper, you know? So we have to be careful of that. So I do think there's room and there's funding to fund some of these initiatives that really kind of help some of our poor members of our society kind of get on their feet. But that would require our government stopping with pet projects to their buddies. I mean, because we're seeing that like millions of dollars going to the Kennedy Center and PBS and all this stuff in the middle of a coronavirus pandemic. Like, why are we giving money to PBS when that money could have went to a small business or a poor child family who need internet service? I mean, so will anything change? I don't think so. I don't think so. Yeah, hopefully, but I don't think so.
Okay, Jenny.
I do. And I might be the eternal optimist of the world here, but a couple things. So when they said that we were rolling out free college for frontline workers, there was people that were like, yes, finally, right? Like, why not? Yes, absolutely. And then there were people that were like, well, why not me? There were, nurses and doctors that are like, just please erase my student loan debt. That's the only thank you I need. Take this huge burden off of me so that I can have more financial security for my family. When they gave the extra $600 a week on top of unemployment, we heard politicians say, well, they're going to make too much money and they're not going to go back to work. When what they really should have been saying was, why don't we value these people enough to pay them a living wage to begin with? And how do we make those corrections? So I think that this has been an eye-opener as far as the differences between people who have and people who don't, and how vast those differences can be. And if we live in a place where we can't miss 2, 3, 4 paychecks without our lives completely falling apart, the system is broken. Our healthcare system is broken. Our education systems are broken. And for so long, we just let people grind away and we didn't listen. And then all of a sudden we're faced with this reality where we depend on the people that are working at grocery stores. We depend on people who drive trucks. We depend on our mailmen. We depend on all of these people to live and do the very basic functioning of society. And we need to take care of them. We need to pay them a living wage. And we need to make it so if you get sick, it's not a death sentence financially, and it's not a death sentence physically. So I think that this has been a great wake-up call. If there's any silver lining in this, and thank goodness it's happening in an election year, so it cannot get swept under the rug come November. I feel like we have to keep talking about it, and we have to ask politicians, what did you learn? What are you going to be doing differently? And how are you going to make it so we're all in a better situation when this happens again? We're in a global society. This is not the only time we're going to face an issue like this. It may not look exactly the same, but something's going to happen again. We're going to see another recession. It's going to come around again. So what are we going to do differently to be prepared and not let all these people die and learn nothing from it? So yes, things will change because they're broken, and it's here. It's happening.
All right, guys, we're coming towards the end of the show, but I want to ask a question on a lighter note. I actually got two. My first one is, they said the casinos might not open till next year. Y'all gonna be okay with that?
You know what?
I'm blackjack.
I'm okay
gambling.
I'm okay with it, but I'm worried about my friend who's gonna lose her job making $25 an hour. That's what I'm worried about. My friend I grew up with, she like I make $25 an hour. Now tell me where I'm gonna find another job like that. That's who I'm worried about. But so I'm a Mr. Free Parking. I'm a Mr. Free Parking.
Dig that. Well, guys, first of all, I want to thank you both for coming on the show. Like I said, I obviously didn't expect you guys to all of a sudden just change your viewpoints on everything in today. But we did want people to be able to hear it from both sides, So we definitely thank y'all for coming in there. You didn't know what y'all was coming into, so I appreciate that. But we have a segment before we close the show. It's called Talk Yo Ish. That means you got 60 seconds. You can talk about whatever. You can promote something. If you just want to tell people good wishes, please do that before we close out. Jenny, if you could start off right quick, just 60 seconds, whatever you want to say to the people.
2 things. Let's please call your grandparents, call the people that are living in nursing homes. If you know anyone that's working in a nursing home, tell them you love them. It is a really hard, lonely place right now, and we cannot forget about all of our grandparents and the people who are at their final end of life and they need our love. Second thing, and this is kind of a technical topic, if you don't need to go into mortgage forbearance, do not do it. Pay your mortgage. It can cause a world of hurt if you do not absolutely need to. So pay your mortgage, talk to your servicer, do not go into forbearance unless you have literally no other choice, or you can put yourself in a very tough situation for years to come. So please, take your time, ask the right questions, and call your grandparents.
Christina?
Everybody, please, every day go outside and be active. I know sitting in the house is very stressful. It can be very overwhelming, but go outside every single day and breathe some fresh air. I promise it helps. It makes your day go by so much better. And importantly, pray. I'm a Christian. I pray every day, and pray and get outside, and that will give you some peace and some comfort, and embrace and love one another. And the last thing is we have to be very careful that even though there's such radical different opinions about how to handle this, that we don't demonize each other with our disagreements, that we realize that, yeah, there's a small segment of people who are just out of their minds, but most people are looking for the well-being of everybody. We need to keep that in mind.
So you're not going to say Christina Caramo Project on Facebook and nothing? Just go, okay, fine.
Oh, yeah,
I gave you the board.
My website.
Get out of here, man. Well, anyway, guys, Keith, once again, thank you. Lakeisha, if you want to talk to him right quick before we get out of here.
No, I really don't have too much to say, but just everybody has a right to feel how they feel. Everybody has a right to their opinion. Just make sure that you guys get the facts. Opinions are man-made, facts can be proven, and just stay humble and just respect the decisions people decide to make. I mean, we may not agree with other people choose to do, but at the end of the day, as long as you're doing your part and keeping yourself out of harm's way and keeping other people out of harm's way, you know, just stay humble. That's all I can stay humble.
And I'm going to piggyback off of that. Once again, thank you guys for coming to the show. And like she said, just respect everybody. This is crazy right now, so we got a lot of energies, a lot of emotions on both sides. Just please try to respect each other. Well, guys, we are out of here. Once again, thank you for listening to You We Talk. You know you can check us out on Facebook at Urban Embodiment 313, Instagram at Urban Embodiment. We even got YouTube. Follow us, Urban Embodiment. You can watch the playback. Podcast Detroit. Download the app. So, till the next time, I am Deshaun Whip Dog Whipple.
And I'm Lakeisha.
You gonna keep missing the drop? We've been doing this for 13 weeks. You always miss it. All right, fine.
Just
And we
close
will
out the
see you
show,
next
man.
time, guys.
Just close out the show, man. All right, everybody have a good night. Stay home and stay safe if you can.
All right.
Thank you very much, ladies.